Watch closely on this one. Just kidding. Just to start the call on a
That's
funny note.
perfect. I don't find anything wrong with that.
Just to have some fun. Yeah.
That was good.
We've
That
had
was funny.
we've had those things, and I've been looking at them for 3 months now, and finally pulled them out the other day, and not a single thing went right. Um, Extremely hard. Like new respect for watching the elite athletes just go up and down that thing like it's no thing. I made it up half the ramp side. I made it up almost to the top one time, but then absolutely got terrified and fell off. So if you ever get a chance, I recommend playing with it. All right, let's take a look at Bobby here. Two big things jump out at me. What jumps out at you guys? A good and then two things I would want to correct immediately jumped out at me. That was for sure the best. What do you
Some
guys got?
soft,
Justin Banal.
some soft shoulders, and besides the first one, the other ones, there's not a lot of pushing.
I think he needs to
That
definitely
one,
get under it more.
Yeah, I think they're correlated. Um, First thing I noticed, and it's just in order of what he does, is I do really like his setup here. Like that position, that was the first thing. Like a lot of really nice things. Like he's got good active shoulders. It looks like back. His shoulders are in front of the barbell. And I really like that his feet are back. There's no forward inclination there. So not all bad. I really, really like what he did there. Let's address the shoulders and getting under more because I do think they go together. So let's just play it through. That one he gets there pretty well, but his depth of getting under kind of stays the same through all these reps. He doesn't stick that one well. And the way he gets under is by when he needs to get under more is by doing what? Starfish. So
Yeah.
as this weight's getting heavier, he's actually breaking down his technique and going wider and wider and wider. I think in part, besides like just taking a step back and working that skill of the footwork, I think it actually happens because watch when he sets up again. Look where his feet already are. They're already a little wide. Like they weren't where he started. So I see this all the time in athletes, like when they're especially when they're cycling a barbell, they don't bring the feet back under, and then their shuffle stays the same of what it was, but they're already starting wider, and the starfish gets worse. He's already got an issue with going wide, so now that he's starting wide, it got wider. Um, so just like a little quick thing like that, like hey, bring your feet in, can actually help correct that issue. And I think I would start with the footwork, and I think by starting, because even that, right, even though he gets there and sticks, he's like that mat's probably 4 feet wide, and he's almost to both edges of that mat. Like that's really wide. Even though he's there, and even though he's stuck this far with his shoulders, I think if we bring the feet in on the next one, and he has the ability to get under in a good position, like easily brought up, I think it will help slow mo that second one that kind of presses out. Like, look how high the bar is there. You bring the feet in, you give him a little bit more of a squat. He doesn't have to have this last little rest that he's there. So I actually think the footwork, and the ability to get under, and then what Justin's seeing with like that active shoulder and that stick, I think those will go together. I think if you solve what's happening in the receive, you solve that active like stick shoulder there. Does that make sense to you guys? That's like sometimes the beauty with Olympic. I don't want to say Olympic weightlifting. It's functional movement is they're multi jointed. They're most of the muscle groups going. So if one thing's off, there's a ripple effect into something else. Sometimes the faults we see aren't necessarily like the big issue. The root cause is somewhere else. I think that is the case for him here. One more big thing I see. I'll play it through again. What do you guys see there? All right, having trouble looking at it. Let's talk about the snatch, right? Besides the feet, I think addressing that will address the other thing. You could selectively ignore this last thing I see, and I would have no problem with it. And then once he gets feet down, then we can address it. But let's say his feet are going perfect, right? And we're looking for a fault. We're watching him. What is going to be a major fault that we see with snatching or any Olympic weightlifting?
Bar path.
That can be one. So like, not what I'm seeing, but let's look at it because I didn't pay attention. So maybe it's not good. Let's just look at the bar path for shits. Yay or nay?
Yay.
Yeah, that looks pretty good. I am happy with the bar path. So we know that's not an issue, right? But you check the box, right? We know now that's not the problem. What's another issue that we're going to see with Olympic weightlifting movements?
Lack of hip extension.
Lack of hip extension. What goes with that? Making you guys really think here.
Jumping or
Yeah, jumping and timing, right? It's not just we want to get the hip open. We also need to make sure what the arms are doing and the timing is there with it. So pay attention and only zoom in to that point in time. This hip extension and what's the saying? If the arms bend, the power ends. Watch that on this. What do you see?
He starts bending a little too soon.
Yeah, he's pulling early. Now, his hips, his jump is pretty damn good, right? Like if I just paused that video, you're like, dude, this guy has no issue at all. That's amazing. Bobby's a super athletic guy. But because he breaks here, right? Slow mowing through, he is gonna lose a little bit of time, right? And even though this isn't a crazy amount of weight, and he bends those arms and he's able to hold it and he doesn't get re-straightened, when the load gets heavier, eventually that load's gonna re-straighten those arms and he's gonna lose even more power. But like let's say he's backing it off to his full ability to extend because he doesn't want to do that subconsciously, that's going to be an issue there too. So that would be the other thing. I would really, after he gets his footwork down, really try to get the strong shoulders, but the patience in that pull. He's pulling early for sure. So when you guys are looking at movement, especially very dynamic, fast movement, and you look at somebody and you're like, there's probably something there, which 99% of the time there is, check yourself on like, okay, what's a major fault that we'll see in Olympic lifting? Lisa did a great job. She said bar path. You check bar path. It was good. Don't worry about it. And Justin did a great job. Hip extension. Look at hip extension. He could not be jumping all the way, or it could be a situation like this, which is just early pulling. So if you kind of have those like really major faults and you kind of have those in the back of your mind at all times, it's going to help you see subtle faults like this, even though he is extending his hips, that he's proliferating. That's actually something that I'm going to implement with my staff is like every day on the movements, just one or two things that are probably going to go wrong to help their eyes get trained on where to look. Most of the time, it's not an issue of someone can't see faults. It's an issue of they're just not looking in the right place. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Good job with that, guys. We'll just play it one more time here just to make sure there's not anything else. He looks like he's bracing his core pretty good. He's not all wobbly, so I like that. He actually stomps his feet down really well, considering how wide he gets. So he has some good things happening here. Just a couple small tweaks I think would make it even better. And Bobby's a person that it's been a while since I've had him, but I would go to guess that if I gave him like a max box jump, he would crush it and be in like the top three of the game, right? So his
Yeah.
athleticism is for sure there. The fact that he's kind of struggling at whatever that was, 105, 115 for three, he's got the power and he's got the physical components. We just really need to put the skill with him to maximize that. Did you guys see? I don't know how much games you watched. Did you guys? I forgot his name. The other Russian, really, really tall guy. Did you see what happened to him on the clean ladder? So he was, I think it was the first time through, or maybe the second round through. He had one of the higher cleans in the field. He had like a 395 or 390 clean. So he's someone that you're looking at going, okay, like he can take a top five finish in this event. On one of the heavier bars, but it's down to like two rep or one rep, I don't remember exactly, pulled his bicep. And I don't know if he tore it. I don't know if it was just a strain, but you could clearly see he injured his bicep on the clean. And that is stemming from when he's doing his pulls, this here. Really, really tense. It's now 300 pounds. It gets yanked under tension in the bicep. We see it on deadlifts too when people do a mixed grip. If you ever see somebody with a mixed grip and one arm is straight and one arm is like bent like this, that's a recipe for tearing your bicep as well. So that's why some people don't like mixed grip. You got to make sure that arm is also straight on the stator. They're just little things to look out for because one bicep's going to put somebody out for a while. More motivation to not do anything. I got a ton of Olympic weight to stay on that. It's gonna jerk, but we'll look at that last. I'm gonna play it one more time. Let me know what you see. Sorry. There's a simple one and there's a tough one.
Yeah, he's bouncing off the barbell off the hip.
Yeah, he is. It's 100% part of his problem. He actually, I'm gonna slow mo it. So this is a really good one, Isa. To since you said bar path, like at just really first glance on this, you're like not bad, right? Like you see a little jump forward, so you know it's not. There's something we need to fix, but like his movement's good overall. Like positions look pretty strong. So when he sent me this, I had to look at piece by piece. I knew he was sending the bar out and around, but I didn't know if he was just kind of reverse curling it or if he was smacking it. He did have an issue with smacking the bar with his hips often. I want you to pay attention to something here, guys, and why it's so important for that bar path to remain close the entire time. So when he hinges over, he's about to move. Watch the bar in relation to his thigh in the first couple inches. What's it do? Gets away from his thigh, right? And because it gets away from his thigh, he knows he needs to keep the bar close. He now brings it back into the hip. And because there's this movement of it goes away, back, and away, it's creating this left and right movement with the bar rather than straight up. So because it got away from him early, caused him to need to bring it back into the hips, and that movement into the hips that way is why he hits it back out. So sometimes when people are smacking the bar with their hips, it's because they're letting it swing early slightly, and it's creating like an S shape. So this would have been a really good one to just look at bar path early on because you don't just see the hip pop like Elise caught. You see like a root cause of why he's probably hip popping early on in his actual. And then from there, you guys know what happens once that bar hits the hips. I'll slow mo through. Look how far out in front of the torso it was. He's here. That bar should really be already touching the shoulder, and he's still got to pull it into him, and that's why he jumps forward. That bar is now yanking him forward in the pull. The first one's very subtle. It gets bigger and bigger as he goes to the left. See how that jump grows? That jump's going to grow with more fatigue. That jump's going to grow with more load. So just another example of getting exacerbated as intensity. What's one other very simple thing I don't love? Easy one here. Bobby did it good.
Jumping and stomping.
He does do a good job with that. Like his feet, he does land pretty flat, even though he's getting jumped forward. So that's a good catch of a good. Look at his hinge here. Right when we stopped it on Bobby, Bobby actually bowed forward. Right, Jason's like he's bowing a little bit, but he's turning it a little squattier than we want. So if this barbell was going to the floor, what's the main issue here? His knees are completely in the way, and he's got to loop that bar around the knees if he was doing touch and go reps. So I need him to have more of a bow and get the shoulders more in front of the bar because when we put this clean together, that's the position he's actually going to be in. And if he was cycling going to the floor, now he's going to change his bar path. It's probably going to be out in front of him because he had to loop around. He's going to do way more work. We already know he has an issue with popping the bar off, so that's probably going to exacerbate as well. Fun story. Our first games of the games with me last week. Our first workout was a triple touch and go squat. And when he goes to the floor, the barbell ends up like in line with his toes. So he's got a gap in the bottom of that touch and go rep. And you see why that gap happens. So yeah, he just needs to bow more, send the butt back up to the wall, get some hamstring tension, which is also going to make him more powerful. Other than that, though, squat looks phenomenal. Feet are flat, knees are out, elbows are nice and high. A lot of really good things. Posture. At first glance, looks pretty good, right? Could be a little more in the heels. I would just cue him push the knees out hard to try to get in that. But I mean, his torso is pretty, it may be slightly forward, but he does a pretty good job of staying vertical. Looks like he's hitting a pretty good extension. He maybe has a little more with it. Knees are a little soft. I like the receive. This doesn't seem like a heavy load for him. The only thing I'd be a little cautious. Let me make you guys think. What would you be a little cautious of in this? It's light, so he doesn't need to get lower.
Maybe when it's heavier, he would need to widen.
Yeah, I think just
Yeah.
a hair. Because you see that front foot, how that heel's peeling off the ground. I do think when it gets heavier, it's probably going to push him more. So if he has like another half inch of wideness, and then maybe just being a little more mindful of some flexion in the back knee, he wouldn't end up catching the split and the receive and being really pushed forward. That's what I would be cautious of as the leg person. Fix it, even though it's very, very, very minimal. Try to just correct it now because the correction now may lead to him not missing a really heavy split later on. So, yeah, good catch. And that it's when I say it's subtle, it's not much. It's maybe a half inch, not an inch. One more time. I don't think I have anything else on this one. What's a good cue for him, like bumping it everywhere?
Pull the bar to the hips as you stand.
Yeah, keep it like active in the whole time. Because if he never leaves the thigh, I don't think he bumps his hips. I would tell him to paint the barbell was like a paintbrush, like paint your thighs and your hips, no gaps, and that may work with just a simple like, thought process there as well. Go gymnast. I have an immediate thought. What do you guys think? We've seen at least two toes well before.
It would be for the
Immediately, just watching your toes to bar previously, you look a lot snappier. You look like you have a little more tension and you're getting out of that like arch quicker. Did you feel like that on this, Elise?
Yeah, because it was the toes to bar and burpees. So I lowered the reps obviously just because of I told you guys about what my dietitian said going at 70%. Um, so I was really just trying to work on the form and the technique for like a smaller set to get more comfortable. I haven't done toes to bar in a while, so they actually felt pretty good. I was a little bit shocked myself.
No, yeah, I think these look better than toes to bar you've done before. They just look like you have a lot more tension to me. And then in your thought process of what you were trying to make perfect in that day, what were you thinking?
I was definitely thinking about my shoulders really coming back in
Getting a
the
good
arch,
press?
the shoulders, yep, shoulders, and then pressing forward. And then I was trying to work on to jump in the pike, and that was not a good pike at all. I just realized right.
Yeah, it was pretty straight, but you do have like your hip is closed. So I mean, you were able to go right into the arch like you want to, and you were able to get a rep. So I mean, it may not have been perfect, but you accomplished what you were trying to do there. Yeah, it just looks like to me you have more tension, even though it's not perfect, especially on the first one. Watch her legs compared to like later in the reps. Right there, that one, and then they kind of get a little lax in the bottom. Like those first two, to me, I liked your tension more. Like these were bet, they were straighter on the second one, right? And then you get a little lax with it there. Look at the
Yeah.
positional difference. And like if you look at that position versus that position, which one's more resembling like that arch? And you can see like how the front body, like the anterior chain that's in front of the bar, would have more tension than that one there. So it just goes to show like when you guys are focusing doing athletes on like trying to keep the legs together and like that really tight arch, this is a good example of like seeing those differences. But you guys have any thoughts, anything to add on this? You look like you do a great job too. Is once you kick, watch how fast she gets her chest and her head through the window. Like you're immediately there. Even just like a split second lag. Like I find when I coach in class, if someone's kicks and they're just a little slow on getting it, you'll see like this slight sway starting. So that's a really good cue sometimes when like people are having trouble. It doesn't matter how high their legs are going. As soon as they hit their apex and they're going to come down, head and chest through as quick as you can. And that usually really helps people with the balance of that hip. Other than that, though, I like the focus. I think I can immediately see the difference. That's a good challenge, I would say, like for ourselves as athletes, but also like to give athletes in class is like try to get them sometimes to like slow something down, and you don't have to do the whole metcon, but like at least on the toes of the bar that day. A lot of focus. Drop the volume so it stayed good, but a lot of focus. Doesn't have to be like that for every movement, but I think sometimes having the intent in that, you'll see people move the needle really. Is this a snatch, Justin?
Yes, a snatch.
I immediately noticed something different from the hang versus the floor. Um, and then you go a couple different directions here on maybe what to work on. I would kind of give two things. Sometimes I'll leave two. Feel free to blurt out anything you want here.
I would just say jump tall.
Yeah, that could be for sure one. I think like to me, it's really clear she understands the concept of like using the hips and jumping. Um, so I think we could definitely drive that home better to just get the hip open. That one she does pretty good, but there's some where it's still like closed. Like the butt's not totally squeezed. There's like just a little bit more. So yeah, getting as tall as you can, but on that feet could be one. That could be for sure something to work on. What's another?
Early
Arms then legs then arms.
Yeah, the early pull, right? Make sure we jump before we pull. That's another big one. And like the concept, like it's really not a bad snatch. Like her, I think watching the understanding of what needs to happen is all there. And she also looks pretty fluid in it. So I think like things would come really quickly on her as well. It's not like I can tell she's not like overthinking movement at all. Justin, what were you gonna say?
In terms of like a prescription for this, I'd be like, let's just slow it down a little bit. I feel like there's a little
That's
bit of a
part of mine.
rush that's happening here.
Yeah, that is part of mine. And where is there a specific spot you would apply that prescription?
Um, Slowing it down from the pull off the floor, and
Yes,
then
100%.
speeding it after that. It's the concept I think we've described a couple times. It's like you pull out of the neighborhood, you start going slow, and then you hop on 95, and you start speeding up.
That's exactly where I would go to. All of you guys are right. We could get a little more hip extension, arms are bending before the pull. All of that stuff can be worked on. I would start, and this is the reason I said two things. The bar path and the hang is great. Like she stays pretty damn close that whole time. As soon as we go to the floor, it's close to the shins, but then now we're just completely away from the body here. So the prescription Justin's giving for the slow it down, I want to see her go slow. Damn, I did that terrible. Very slow, fast, right? And the reason I would do it is her point to work on is we're going to shave the shins, which she does good, but we're going to continue to shave the thighs 3/4 of the way up and then explode. That way she doesn't feel rushed off the floor, which is what it looks like for me. So Dustin's super spot on with that. I think she would be able to do that simultaneously working on something else. So I think she could do that while working on what we said, like squeeze the button when you jump or get taller, or make sure you jump before you pull, because we're slowing the first part down. Like that's not going to take all this brain width. That's the reason why I say I think she can work on two things at once. I would go with a different direction on what to work on that second thing. I'm going to play it one more time and see if you guys catch what I would. And I am like selectively ignoring. There's a little more hip extension. The arms are bending a little bit. Like I'm ignoring that on purpose for this. I would work on her feet because if we go from what she's doing here, like she's showing me she understands what she needs to do to execute this snatch. But the moment that we now are going to say, okay, it's getting heavier, we need to get under or we need to squat this thing, the feet never land in position for it. So I want to see her strong shuffle, strong receive, and stand, just because it's going to trickle down on that. And as this heavier and more intense and more complex.
So if you were going to like triage this, would you start feet first, then move to like hip extension, and then
Yeah,
pull as like the try to eliminate the early pull? Like, is that the
yeah, that would be exactly what I do. And the reason being is it's like I just said, it's going to stage her to be able to do the complex lifts earlier versus if she got her pulled absolutely perfect down, there was no early pull, good hip extension, but she's still landing in the same spot, and we go to a squat snatch, she's still in trouble. Like she has all that down, but now the feet aren't there to correct it. And the reason I would triage it that way beyond that is I'm just approaching a more simple thing to digest and get down first rather than the more complex thing.
and
Right?
it's
If
also
you really,
the ground up, so that would also make
yeah,
sense.
yeah, 100%. Like if the base ain't there and the base ain't stable, it really doesn't matter what else happens. That's a great tone too. But yeah, I'm just working like more of a fundamental movement in that rather than the still a fundamental movement, but more complex there. If you look at overhead squat, what's the first thing you're going to teach? Stance. Taught that in the air squat, and then it's going to be. So I think like you said, just slowing down that pull and use the paintbrush thing or shave your legs and make sure that bar path stays close the whole time. And then when she lands, I just want to see a really strong footwork. Let's watch how she stomps with it. Because I think that telling her, add a stomp in that position may just help it click even more. And she does land cozy, so it would just accidentally also correct something else with that flat foot landing too by her working the shuffling stomp. Anything else you guys want to add here? I got to take Amy Everett's Oli class while I was at the games. Those of you who know who Amy Everett is, she worked for HWPO, Catalyst Athletics, Natty Rogers' coach, very high level coach. And her really big thing, like it wasn't an overly impressive class at 6 a.m. And you can tell me and her didn't want to wake up today. But her thing was all about stability. She was like, if you don't have stability in the receive, it doesn't matter what else is happening in the snatch. And she was like, that means, the hips are in the right place, the feet are down, the shoulders, they're stabilizing the bar overhead correctly. So at a point, if you don't have stability in the land or a strong landing position, you can be the best puller and timed person in the world. Your snatch ain't done. Same thing with that, really. Just a little less.
This
That
also
makes
makes me
sense.
this makes me think about Squat University did a post today. It was really good, and it had to do with the dip and the stability in the dip. And so they showed Olympic athlete with the knees moving forward first, and she lost the stability versus hinging and
Getting
then
pushed out.
external rotation, and then the external rotation allows in the dip to use more of the glutes. And what I see here from Casey is that her knees are coming in a little bit, so I don't think she's getting any of the external rotation in her dip.
Like in the hangs.
Yeah,
Yeah, I see what you mean. You see it a lot. It's not egregious, I would say at all. You see it a lot in a dip and drive for like a push press or like a jerk. You see people collapse, they go knees forward, or they just don't have engagements. And even though like the knees don't go forward, you see a collapse happening. It's a really, really common thing. Sometimes that's also just one of the glutes not wanting to really play today. That happens. That happens too. And then other times it's just the person has never been taught it either. You'd be surprised how many times I teach like a jerk day or a push press, and I really start to get on the knees with the position, and athletes will go, "That's how you get in your heels." And it's like years of them not understanding how to keep the heels down because they've been dipping knees forward first every single time. So that's a good observation to catch. And I mean, just simply put, in everything in life, right? If the foundation is bad, the rest of everything's going to start to fall apart, right? I can have the nicest house with the nicest kitchen in the world. If I don't have a foundation, kind of useless. Let's go with failed. Actually, let's do this one. It's the same workout as Bobby's. I believe this is the same workout. Looks like they're even sharing a bar.
Sorry, the video sucked. I started too late.
That's okay. All right. We'll just pause it a half second here. Same thing for Bobby, right? Love this position. I think it does a pretty good job. And then we talk about what Justin was just saying with knees, like knees are tracking over the toes. I think a lot of times coaches look for knees tracking over the toes only in squatting, and that's not the case. Even pulling a deadlift from the ground, like you should still be looking for that. And if you start to, you'll notice a lot of people are collapsing in. Sometimes it's a stance problem too, to you off of that. But I'd love to start. Get ready, guys. It goes fast. What would you guys say with that one? Knowing what we just watched with Bobby, same hang snatch, looks like they're even partners in sharing the same barbell. They for sure have the same fault. For sure could have them work on that, right? Bobby's land and Angela's land is almost exactly the same, right? Angela's probably even worse because she's shorter than Bobby and almost the same 4 foot wide mat. So I think like this is a good opportunity, especially as a coach, to like when you do have people partnering up and you see them have the same fault, let them have some responsibility as well. Make them, Bobby and Angelo here, when they're landing their snatch, make sure the foot shuffles where it needs to be. You can draw lines on the floor, you can help with their origination, anything like that. Hold that position a second and then stand. Because they have the same issue, they can now also be each other's coach on it too. And they can kind of keep it in check, which Misery Loves Company, right? If I have to work on something with my partner, I'm probably going to do it more if I'm watching him and he's watching me, and we're at least doing it together. I'm not alone. So I would actually use, even though I'll slow-mo Angelo in a second, even though Bobby has that real early pull, we talked about if he was able to get under, he would also be able to stick it. I'd probably just ignore that given these circumstances and both having a footwork. Let's watch Angelo's pull. He does a much better job than Bobby, right? He does agree with that. Arms stay straight pretty much the whole time. There is a fault, it looks like. What do you guys see there?
Yeah, it looks like the barbell gets a little bit away from him, but it's kind of hard to tell.
Yeah, it's hard to tell from the angle for sure. But if you look at it, I think you're right. I'm with you on that. If you look at his arms here, yes or no, would you be able to take his arms and pull it into his hips? I think for sure, yes. Yeah, I think it just creeps a little bit away. And then look at his jump. His body actually moves forward as well. So I think that's the proof that you're right when you're seeing what I'm seeing as well. But I would for sure start. Hey guys, let's get the shuffle down, stomp the feet, hold it for just a half second, then stand. And let them be a team and let them work together. It's kind of the beauty in but it's a heavy day. We're going off the rack, got people in pairs and teams or sharing barbell and stuff like that. You can give these little homework assignments and little things for athletes to help each other on, right? Because there's only one of you and maybe 15 people in class, and Bobby's a smart enough guy to go, Angelo, that doesn't look like this cross stance, and Angelo knows the same for him. So it can kind of be an accountability loop that you can use there. And then just any other time, if people are sharing, which I know Riptide, you got no choice, you're going to share regardless. But if you guys are coaching a class and you have an opportunity to have people share, have them share. Like if we're looking at long term success in many realms of like, see at least in fitness, in gym retention, in community, all of these things. If I have people share on heavy days and share barbells on, clean and snatch days, they're just going to create better relationships. And if I have friends at the gym, I'm more likely to continue to show up at the gym and I'm less likely to leave. So take advantage of those moments as well. Very small action, but can, I think, ripple into a long thing, a good long relationship. You guys want to do a clean or do you want to do a snatch? I've got a couple of both.
Clean. We've already seen a lot of snatches.
There we go. And I'm wearing the same shirt. So what a stud, nothing wrong. I got a few things. Justin, do you see anything before I dive into myself? I'll ask you.
The one thing I noticed whenever you lift, like you just like walk up to the bar so casually, like pull it right up. And there's like barely any setup for you where I'm like staring at the bar, thinking about it. It's like you're not thinking about it, you're just like getting right into it.
I grip and rip. I don't like thinking. I've always had more success. But once I was comfortable lifting, I've always had more success walking up and going. That being said, let's stop it real quick. I don't hate the setup, but I do think, let me pause it. I do think I could do a better job at getting a little more engagement back in. Even though it is fast, like positionally speaking, my shoulders are in front of the bar, neutral spine. This is a tough position for me. I don't enjoy it. I'm very tight in this position, but I should take an extra half second to really try to lift the chest, put the shoulders back. So even though it's fast, like I don't hate it, but it could be better for sure. I have one that I know I do all the time, but it's pretty clear.
I have one I see now.
Go ahead.
So when the bar is on the floor, like you're not getting as much thoracic extension in the setup every time it comes down. So you're getting a little
When
bit
I'm
of that
touching and going,
ground.
right?
Yeah, the shoulders coming forward a little bit more than I would probably like to see.
For sure. Classic Nate. Really bad habit I have. You see it on deadlifts too. I hate engaging like that. I need to engage like that. Because when the bar, like you can see that there, like that is not a great position. Shoulders are pretty chill. Like there's a little tension just because I can tell you for lifting, but there's not the tension I should have. Not a crazy heavy weight for me. I would call this like moderate, maybe creeping into moderate heavy. The issue is as soon as I get heavy, all of a sudden it's like I have to get serious and get the tension because the weight just yokes me because I have a lazy habit of not getting those lats really engaged for these lifts. Good catch on that. It gets sloppier as I go for sure. So that is for sure one. Just slow down, right? That's all I would say. Tell an athlete there. I have two more that I dislike very much. One,
Nate, I had one if I can jump in.
go ahead.
And I don't know if this is wrong, but we talked about before keeping more of a neutral neck when you're deadlifting as opposed to Olympic lifting for balance, for like that visual spatial awareness. You start off on that first lift with looking at the wall, but then as you
Man, I
start
look
to
at the floor.
through, you keep your chin down even on the pull up. So
Yeah,
I don't know if that's right or wrong, but I did see that.
wrong. Yeah, I should like it. They should all look like this in the bottom. Ice forward for balance, and then when we talk about where the head goes, the body goes, like what Justin's catching, and as I come down here, a lot more relaxed in the thoracic spine. That neck is I'm starting to look down, so everything's going to also follow that. Deadlifts, it should be neutral the whole time. The head should go with the spine. I perfectly speaking, Olympic weightlifts, eyes on the horizon, for balance factors. So yeah, good catch there. I absolutely despise my weight distribution in my feet. Watch my feet going through all of these. And it's one that I'm constantly battling. Every landing is in my toes. Collapses. When I actively think of stopping my feet, it gets a lot better. I just don't remember to do it all the time. So there's always this little shift forward that's happening.
Are you talking about at the bottom of the squat, like where you bounce out of it?
Yeah, watch like how it collapses. See how the weight just goes into the toes. That one's probably the worst one. That one's probably actually the best one. But everything's just slightly forward. Let's watch the actual pull. Actual pull's not terrible. I'm pretty good. But like, look at that position. Like, would you call that a strong? Knees are collapsed in, right? Heels are off the ground. Part of that is that hip rotation that Justin was talking about earlier. So I'm going to try to slow-mo one of my receivers. Okay. When I'm high, like this isn't a great example.
When you think about it, oh, sorry, Nate.
Go ahead.
When you think about it, you said you don't have that. Like when you
it gets a lot better. I don't want to say I don't have it totally, but it gets a lot better. My foot at least like stays on the ground. Justin was talking about the external rotation in the hip, right? And I'm a good example of this. Like this isn't perfect. If it was like a front squat, it'd be a lot easier to see. But when I start my squat, I have no issue keeping my knees out. And then when I get to this bottom position here, it's so hard to keep my knees out. And my knees usually want to start to collapse in. A lot of athletes work on external hip rotation. And for 90% of the squat, it's what you need, and it's going to activate the glutes. In the bottom of the squat, the way the pelvis will tilt sometimes, we also need to have the ability to have internal rotation. It's just the angling of as the depth is going down. So if you're ever looking at athletes that their knees are out good and they get to the bottom of an air squat and you cue to push the knees out and it's like they don't have the ability and you can see the effort. They may not have internal rotation of their hips and it may just be a mobility issue that you have to work over time. With the statement of having a mobility issue, don't let that be an excuse to not coach that person and not to demand better movement, but know that like some work outside of class is going to very much help. Justin, what were you going to say?
I'm pretty sure it could be one of two things. It could be the lack of internal rotation, or it could be glutes not working properly, or you're not utilizing them.
Yeah, 100%. Person could be trying and the glutes just aren't turning on. That is very true, and that's why
I have that problem, and I feel like I have good internal rotation because I've been working it for a long time now. For the last, I don't know.
But yours is more of like an engagement thing.
It's my glutes just don't want to work. So like today we did the back squats, and coach was like, "Oh yeah, your knees were just caving in, especially my right knee. My left knee was minimal, but my right knee was just like coming right in."
All over the place.
And I'm like, "Yeah, that's because my glutes suck."
Yeah, so yeah, you're 100% right. Like the engagement is a thing too, and that's why if you see like somebody squatting and they can go to the rig and they can hold the rig and they can do this most perfect squat in the world to get themselves in the position, and then you take them off the rig and you're like mimic that, and the squat is a train wreck. like that's kind of what we're talking about here. Like we know their joints and ranges of motions are there, but the engagement and like the neurological system may not be there, and that's why we don't call it flexibility. That's why we call it mobility.
And for me, it's like air squats, anything basically under 100 pounds, I have great form. And once I get over 100 pounds, it's like my knees start wobbling in.
So what I'd be curious about, like a situation like you, is it purely lack of engagement, or is it past a certain point, like the strength isn't able to keep up? It sounds more like a strength thing for me, not necessarily a neurological engagement thing.
That's what I think it is too.
Yeah. Because even though I wouldn't say it'd be terrible in your air squat, I think you would see this little quiver happen if it just was a total lack. Last thing for my clean, been trying to work on it forever, but I can't quite get it past 165. Look at those T-Rex arms, right? Always, always, always. Trying to correct that for a long time, and it has gotten better. But that would be like the other fault I see for this guy. We're a couple minutes to 12. I said during the call it day here. We did like the progression for the muscle up stuff in last Tuesday. I know we talked about another movement. I can't remember what it is. Do you guys remember what that was that we were going to do next? They call, or do you have any suggestions? You guys do remember texting me.
I have a thought. Something with boxes, like box step ups, box jumps. I mean, we've never done a box step up as like a review, and it seems so basic. But I don't know. Is there anything that we can improve upon on a box step up? No.
Yeah, we can add that in. We can do maybe a day of like movements that aren't sexy that coaches kind of breeze over a lot of times, like box step up, box jump over, burpees, like in the
Oh, I have another idea too.
different styles of burpees that can make people more efficient.
I was thinking of also teaching machines, but not like
that was it.
Not just like the machine how to move, but how to teach or coach using the monitor and the screen. So giving people like an understanding of how to utilize the watts or cadence.
How to like learn their pacing over time. That's a good idea. That was it. It was ergs. I just couldn't remember what it was. Okay, so we'll do ergs. We'll do like setup, skill, numbers to pay attention to. Pacing is hard to get into like too much because every person's so different. But at least like getting an idea of like what to pay attention to, I think could be important. And then we'll do like some of those real simple movements that we just kind of always breeze over. We'll go through some of those. So if you guys have any ideas, like we'll do the box, we'll do burpees. I'm having a great part of thinking about these things. Just anything you guys have, send it in the chat, and we'll kind of create a call of this.
Cool. Sounds good. Thank you.
Guys. I'll see you guys Tuesday.